I was talking to a friend the other day who has a new book coming out in a few months. He's been laboring on this book for, I want to say, 10 years, more than 5 for sure. Every detail is lovingly crafted. And he's like, and probably no one's going to see it. That's fine, whatever. And I'm like, stabbed in the heart. I want to hug him and feed him chocolate and make him feel better because it's 100% not fine. And he knows it's not fine. He just feels helpless to do anything about it, and it's making him cynical. We imagine that there's a direct link between becoming great at some kind of creative work, like mastering the skills and the process that goes into being an incredible artist or writer, and becoming a creative pro, meaning having the audience and the income and the impact that matters. You think that if you have one, you have the other. But that link that we imagine exists between those two things, that link does not exist. This is the buried if-then statement that if asked, we would all deny we believe, and yet we act as if it's true. If you study hard enough and get good grades and work your ass off to master your art form and make good work, then your work will be found and you'll have an audience of raving fans and you'll become an established and financially stable artist. And when I just say it like that, it's ridiculous. And yet for the vast majority of writers and artists, that is the underlying assumption driving most of their career choices and lack of such. And that includes me, until I pulled back the curtain and realized what I was doing, or rather not doing. And when I figured that out, I was so pissed. So this is what happened. I was gearing up for a major book release a while back, and I came across an article in The Atlantic called The Secret Shame of Middle-Class Americans by Neil Gabler, who is a well-known, well-paid writer, New Yorker level guy, who came out in this article as deeply in debt and frighteningly financially unstable. This is a guy whose kids were through grad school already. He should not have been reduced to eating eggs all week because he couldn't afford groceries. In my own life, I'd been more financially responsible than he had on a budgetary level, so I wasn't teetering on the edge. But I was just as deep in the mythology of how this all works. I recognized myself in him. He'd proceeded along a similar path to mine at a higher level. And reading his story, the scales fell from my eyes. I realized I'd been acting on the received wisdom around how one becomes a creative professional. So, number 1, get really good at what I do. Check, got it. Number 2, find an agent who will get it published at a commercial publisher. Check, great. Number 3, magic fairy dust. Something must happen in the middle, right? And then number 4, life. Then I'm done. A few more books, but eventually, royalties. No, that can't be right. Can't be royal. Hollywood money. Something will come along and make it all work. And then I get to focus on making my work my way, no compromise, right? Ugh, Jesus, how did I ever believe that? I was furious. And honestly, I was even angrier about all of this because I pride myself on not accepting conventional wisdom. And I was embarrassed and ashamed that I'd drunk all that Kool-Aid. And it's not like I didn't feel that something was amiss, like I didn't sense something. I knew something was off for years, but I couldn't get myself to focus on that looming miasma of scary unknowns that happens between the get good at what you do and get stable somehow. It was hovering like just outside my peripheral vision, but I put on blinders and just kind of pretended it wasn't there. So my writer friend who I mentioned, he is cynical because he actually loves his work and he knows it's important and he needs his work to have an impact, but he's been burned before. And I know so many people who are in the same boat. They've got 16, 20 plus years of education and training in their art form, writing and art programs in school, after school enrichment programs, summer camps, BFAs, MFAs, apprenticeships, the list goes on. But all of that education offered virtually nothing on how you use that professional grade work to actually, become a paid professional. The odd semester of professional practice class, a few career services lectures, our educational system is just not prepared to help us navigate becoming autonomous creative professionals, self-directing our careers. And it's really not all that surprising when you realize that most of our professors also have no idea how to build successful independent creative careers from scratch. I mean, they followed a conventional path. That's why they're professors. So maybe they're not all that inventive about how other people might go about creating a different path. Okay, so now Instead of being sprinkled with a glittering cloud of magic pixie dust, we're staring directly at that billowing, choking fog that obscures the way to where we want to be. Great, that's fun. Here's the thing. Once I realized I had been expecting 2 + 2 to produce, I don't know, a full-time salary, I started investigating what exactly was inside that fog. And I realized what I was aiming for, which was some version of magical bestsellerdom and the fancy income that came with it, was simply not the expected result of my and my publisher's actions. These are actions we'd taken before, and we did not have that result. Why should this time be different? I mean, it could happen if the Deus Ex Machina fairy hit me up, but it didn't happen for any of my many books over a 25-year career. And that initial realization that my actions had been almost completely divorced from what I thought I was aiming for was incredibly painful. But I am so grateful that I went through that, because honest to God, it changed my life. I decided that waiting for fairy dust was infantilizing me. I wanted control. I wanted to take action and see results. I wanted to know that I could change my fate. And so I figured out what it would take to hit my target. I decided I was aiming for the wrong thing. I decided to make a hard pivot and change the target I was aiming for. And then, well, it's not like I woke up in a swimming pool full of gold like Uncle Scrooge, but in some ways it was better, because I immediately felt a sense of agency. I could see the results of my actions. I felt like I was at last living in congruence with my intentions. So just a few years later, I have a company and a team, and I'm way less stressed out, and we make good money, and we're just beginning. And I admit that many artists and writers would not want to take my path into teaching and coaching, and that is totally fine. This is definitely not the only way to be successful. It's just where my particular interests have led me. But the point is, I didn't start to make progress until I nailed down what precisely I was aiming for and identified exactly what I was going to do to get there. My problem was that I had assumed that inside that scary fog were snakes and sucking mire and probably something worse. And it turns out inside is more like a machine. Maybe it's just a simple machine that can provide a bit of leverage. Maybe there are gears and a drive shaft that can connect actions over here to something more powerful on the other end. And those gatekeepers, the publishers, agents, PR people, gallerists, etc., who were depending on to loft us over this fog to the other side, they're like the Wizard of Oz. They don't have magical powers. They're simply tinkerers. They know something about how the machine works because they've actually used it. They've tried it. They've partly built it. And we can learn to use the machine too. We're not born knowing how to do this. It does take work, but we can read the manual. And using the machine at that beginner level is not all that complicated. With practice, we can become more skillful and even improve on how the machine works. We can get more ambitious. Even for those who don't feel ready to master the machine, and when they start, no one feels ready. The myth is that you don't need to worry your pretty little head about the details. Your success is either going to be magical or it won't happen. And that is a lie, and it steals your power. It's not magical, and you can make it happen. So my question to you is, are you waiting for the magical success fairy to fly you to safety on the other side of the fog? What do you fear waits for you if you try to take control?